أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. This is the recording for our third chapter for this particular subject, Islamic Management. And the title for this chapter is Review of the Historical Origin of Management from the Islamic and Western perspectives. At the end of the chapter, it is hoped that the students should be able to, number one, understand the origin and historical development of Islamic management. Number two, the students should be able to comprehend the development of Islamic management essence in each of the history of the four Khulafa al-Rashidin and their post-era. Number three, students should be able to explain the history and development of the Western or conventional management. We move on to the first topic for the chapter, origin and historical development of the Islamic management. The history of the development of Islamic administration and management can be traced back to the Prophet's era more than 1,400 years ago. That is when the Islamic State was formed in Medina. At that time, management practices were more oriented towards the administration of state affairs. It is a kind of building the nation. It is a kind of focusing more on the political angle and to build the understanding between both the people from Medina and people from Makkah. At that time, it is considered as the best model because at that time, the teachings of Islam based on the main sources of knowledge, which are number one, Al-Quran and As-Sunnah, and both were implemented successfully in all areas of life, in the area of social, in the area of leadership, in the area of politics, economics, and so on. Muhammad Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself, as a leader, succeeded in achieving a quality life, which is tayyibah life, and carried out all matters based on the guidance from the divine revelation. So talking about Islamic management, the witness of Tawhidic La ilaha illallah, there is no God but Allah, carries the implications of liberating man from devotion to anything and anyone but Allahu subhanahu wa ta'ala. Tawhidic man is an independent human being who is sensitive to his dignity, to his honor, and his ability as a noble being. The teachings of Tawhid also carry the implication that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the only source of guidance in human life. From here, born the human character Rabbani, who was always aware of the presence of God in all his actions. That is how the foundation of management and administration is built, based on Quranic values. The word tadbir or dabbara, yudabbiru, tadbir itself is a Quranic term mentioned repeatedly in various places, as in Surah Yunus verses 3 and 31, Surah Al-Ra'd verse 2 and Surah As-Sajdah verse 5. For instance, in Surah Yunus, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, "Ask them, O Prophet, who provides for you from heaven and earth, who owns your hearing and sight, who brings forth the living from the dead and the dead from the living, and who conducts every affair. They will surely say, Allah. Say, will you not then fear him? This is the same with the meaning from Surah Ar-Ra'd verse 2 and from Surah As-Sajdah verse 5. The principles and values of Quranic management, such as musyawarah, justice, truth, sincerity, kindness, brotherhood, love, and so on, are not only for read but implemented by following the practice of Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in various contexts, such as a head of state, head of army, chief judge, and so on. Examples of the administration of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam can be clearly seen in the notes of the Sunnah and Sirah, including documents such as the Constitution of Madinah, letters of agreement, and correspondence with foreign heads of state. And then we move on to the era of Khulafa al-Rashidin. First, we look into the era of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq. During the region of Al-Khulafa al-Rashidin, the coverage of Islamic management expanded with the incorporation of new districts in the Union of Islamic Territories. The administrative territory of the first Khalif Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radhiyallahu anh covered the districts of the Hijaz, Yemen, and Bahrain. However, Abu Bakr maintained the administrative system as practiced by Rasulullah because he was very concerned with all the efforts made by the Prophet which he wanted to maintain. Moreover, in the time of Abu Bakr, there was no need to make many changes since his tenureship is only 2 years. And then we move on to the next Khulafa al-Rashidin, which is Umar al-Khattab. Umar al-Khattab, who is also called Amirul Mu'minin or leader of the believers, is considered the father of modernization of Islamic administration. His vast experience as a judge, ambassador, advisor, and so on during the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and Abu Bakr as-Siddiq made him a superior administrator when he was appointed as the second Khalif. His era is known as the era of reform of the administrative system, which includes leadership style, organizational structure, environment, and work culture. Reforms that took place during the time of Umar al-Khattab are as follows. Number 1, the establishment administrative of Baitul Mal to keep all the national treasures at the central and regional levels. Number 2, the establishment of public departments or Diwan in providing services to the public such as the military department, the public complaints department, and the documentation department. Number 3, policy reforms related to the taxation system, land, and the status of the slave. Number 4, construction of physical infrastructure such as canals and dams. And next, formulation of a code of ethics for leaders, for judges, and the military. The third Khalifah was Uthman ibn Affan. Uthman's region can be divided into 2 stages. Number one, during the first 6 years, the atmosphere was peaceful. But during the last 6 years, there was chaos and rebellion against his rule. The factors that triggered the rebellion did not come from Uthman alone, but many were influenced by the role played by his aides Marwan al-Hakam, Abdullah bin Sabah, and Muawiyah bin Abu Sufyan at the later stage. As an administrator, Usman himself, his overly polite and forgiving attitude is what led to the spread of unlawful behavior. The opportunists were no longer afraid of him because Usman immediately forgave their mistakes. In fact, some continued to escape from prison. This attitude may be appropriate for an educator, but it should not be the constant attire of a leader. Such weaknesses were worsened by his reluctance to listen to the criticisms leveled against him about his administrative policies. However, let us look into Uthman's government management successes. Number one, defeat the rebellion movement of the provinces that had been conquered in the time of Umar al-Khattab, such as Khurasan, Alexandria, Armenia, and Azerbaijan. Number two, continuing the movement of conquest and development of Islam. In his time, he succeeded in conquering the areas of Jurjan, Talkan, and Balkh upon to the Jihun River. So are the islands of Cyprus and Rhodes. Number three, perform the process of copying the Quran according to the correct dialect. The last Khalifa is Ali ibn Abu Talib. So Ali ibn Abu Talib had inherited a chaotic government, and he was not able to fix it until the end of Khulafa ur-Rashidin. This is not the fault of one person. Even a shared responsibility, including the figures of the Sahabah themselves. As a person who is known for being firm and radical, as soon as Ali was appointed Khalif, he issued several rulings. Among others, number one, dismiss the governors appointed by Usman. Number two, unlawfully reclaimed the lands distributed by Usman to his relatives. Number three, change the administrative center from Madinah to Kufa. Indeed, Ali was able to define the truth of his actions, but his quick action caused some of his friends to dislike him. On the other hand, Ali delayed the demands of Usman's supporters for his murder to be immediately investigated and punished. It was this delay factor that led to the wild accusation that he also conspired in Usman's murder. Like Usman, Ali himself had less meetings with the leading people of his time. There is an occasion when Talha bin Ubaidullah and Zubair al-Awwam criticized his attitude, but Ali replied, "What do I not know? So I have to meet?" Next, management post-Khulafa al-Rashidin. After the passing of the Caliphate of al-Rashidin, the Islamic system of government has undergone a drastic change from the Caliphate system based on the Shura to the system of inheritance, exclusive group of certain families. The biggest implication of these changes is the weakness of the institution and the practice of Shura in Islamic administration. The administrative developments that happened at that time were the establishment and restructuring of the military department, taxation, correspondence, seal and finance departments at the central level and the military level, correspondence and finance at the regional level. During the Umayyad and Abbasid rule, it was a period of government that immersed many foreign civilizations, especially Persian and Roman civilizations. Therefore, the Umayyad and Abbasiyah era is also seen by historians as a time of deviation from the superior tradition of the Islamic Khulafa al-Rashidin's model. Because of that, at that time was born a great work of ulama figures that authored outstanding books to elaborate on the faith and true path of Islam. Among the books or among the publication are Al-Ghazali by Al-Ghazali with Nasihatul Muluk, Al-Mawdi with Al-Ahkam Al-Sultaniyah, Law on Government, and Abu Yusuf with his Kitab Al-Kharaj, books on taxation. During the Umayyad and Abbasid rule, it was a period of government that immersed many foreign civilizations, especially Persian and Roman civilizations. Therefore, the Umayyad and Abbasiyah era is also seen by historians as a time of deviation from the superior tradition of the Islamic Khilafah model. Because of that, at that time was born a great work of ulama's figures that authored outstanding books to elaborate on the faith and true path of Islam. Among them, by Al-Ghazali, Nasihatul Muluk, Advice for the King, Al-Mawdi, Al-Ahkam Al-Sultaniyah, or Laws on Government, and Abu Yusuf, Kitab Al-Kharaj, books on taxation. Next is Western or conventional management. Basic management techniques have been traced to the city of Ur or Iraq in 3000 before century, where Sumerian priests were keeping written records as a means of recording business transactions. Translations from early Egyptian papyri dating back to 1300 before century recognized the importance of organization and administration in bureaucratic states. Similar records have been found for ancient China. Around 400 BC, Socrates defined management as a skill separate from technical knowledge and experience. Plato also recognized management as a separate art and promoted principles of specialization. In the Republic, Plato describes how carefully selected young men should be trained so that they would develop the appropriate personalities and skills necessary to serve as leaders. Diocletian, a Roman emperor in AD 284, initiated organizational hierarchies when he reorganized his empire into 101 provinces and grouped them into 13 dioceses. This marked the beginning of delegation of authority and change of command. Although ancient Rome's management records are incomplete, the complexity of the administration influenced the development of managerial techniques using the scalar principle and the delegation of authority. The city of Rome efficiently expanded to an empire. We move to the discussion of classical management movement. Classical management movement is the oldest and most widely accepted school of thought among management practitioners and is normally called the classical management movement. This approach to management arose between 1885 and 1940 in an effort to provide a rational and scientific basis for the management of organizations. Its beginning stems from the Industrial Revolution, when people were brought together to work in factories as opposed to the handicraft system whereby people work in small shops or in homes. Industrialization created a need for efficient planning, organizing, influencing, and controlling of all work activities. The classical management movement has two fundamental thrusts, which are scientific management and general administrative management. Scientific management centers on ways to improve productivity. Administrative management theory examines organizations as total entities and focuses on ways to make them more effective and efficient. Next is scientific management. The Soho Engineering Foundry in Great Britain was founded in 1796 by the inventors and developers of the steam engine. The management of the foundry was turned over to the sons James Watt Jr. and Matthew Robinson Bolton, who systematically implemented several management techniques including market research and forecasting, planned machine layout and workflow requirements, planned site location, production planning, production process standards, and standardization of product components. Frederick Taylor of the Midvale Steel Company recognized in the early 1880s the need for labor and management cooperation, cost controlling, and work methods analysis. Taylor understood the principle of greater output achieved through workers' participation, which he called systematic soldiering. There was absolutely no promise of basic wage rates or, as we now know it, minimum wages until Taylor's later programs. Taylor's entire theory was predicated on the assumption that the primary interest of management and the worker was one and the same. If management's goal was lower labor costs, then the workers' goal of high wages could be easily met because their work was considered measurable. It was also Taylor's assumption that once the workers understood the great advantages of scientific management, they would immediately develop a better mental attitude towards management and one another, thus eliminating the need for constructive criticism and complaints. Next is the general administrative management. Whereas scientific management focused on employees as individuals and their tasks, general administrative management theory dealt with total management organization. General management theory was an attempt to develop a much broader theory concerned with administrative management functions and is considered the forerunner of modern organization theory. As with scientific management, there were many contributors to general management theory. Around the turn of the century, a Frenchman named Henri Fayol introduced the management world to systematic management theory. An executive and mining engineer, Fayol played an important role in the field of management from 1888 until the time of his death in 1915. According to Fayol, the basic functions of any manager incorporated planning, organizing, commanding, coordinating, and controlling. Fayol maintained that all activities involved with industrial projects could be separated into 6 sections. Number 1, technical, which involves production. Number 2, commercial, which included buying, selling, and exchange. Number 3, financial, which increased the search for an optimum use of capital. Number 4, security, which provided protection of property and persons. Number 5, accounting, which included statistical analysis. And number 6, managerial, which encompassed planning, organization, command, coordination, and control. FAIL carried the management process beyond the basic hierarchical model developed by Taylor. Under FAIL system, the command function continued to operate efficiently and effectively through a series of coordination and control methods. FAIL recommended regular meetings of department heads and liaison officers to improve coordination of organizational operations. Next is General Administrative Management. Max Weber, the father of bureaucratic management, developed a system in which the individual was granted a series of primary occupations and history of management responsibilities within an office. Each lower office was accountable to the next higher one, following a systematic division of labor which pursued organizational goals and objectives. People working in each office were chosen for their positions based on their qualifications. Their sole responsibilities were the primary occupations or classifications assigned to them when they were hired. Promotions were designed to reward seniority, achievement, or both. According to Weber's plan, promotions were not affected by political maneuvering. Workers were also expected to separate personal business from official responsibilities. For further readings on the historical origin of management, you can look into the internet and find, based on the ideas of brief history of organizations, leadership and management, or you can look into management timeline, or you can look into the Islamic essence of related histories which related to management in an organization. For that, I end up this lecture with Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh.